Close your eyes. Let your mind settle into a calm, peaceful state as we embark on a journey through one of gaming's most iconic and mysterious regions. The Kanto region. It's the birthplace of everything we know and love about Pokémon. Yet beneath its cheerful, colorful surface lies a world far more complex and layered than most players ever realize. Over the next several hours, we're going to explore 151 fascinating facts, theories, and pieces of lore that will transform the way you understand this legendary region and the creatures that inhabit it. The Kanto region is more than just a collection of towns and routes on a map. It is a place where science clashes with nature, where ancient legends intersect with modern ambition, and where the smallest details in a cave or the words of a forgotten NPC can unravel entire narratives about the world of Pokémon. When we think of Kanto, we often think of simplicity. The original games were straightforward adventures where players caught Pokémon, battled trainers, and challenged gym leaders. But that surface-level understanding masks something far deeper. Hidden within the game's code, scattered across Pokédex entries, woven into dialogue, and embedded in the very geography of the region itself, there exists a rich mythology that rivals any of the later generations. What makes Kanto unique among all the Pokémon regions is its duality of inspiration. The Kanto region of Japan, located in the eastern part of the country and centered around Tokyo, served as the geographical foundation for Game Freak's creation. When Satoshi Tajiri, the creator of Pokémon, was designing this world, he drew from his own childhood memories. As a child in the 1960s, Tajiri spent his days exploring the Japanese countryside, catching insects and observing nature in its purest form. He watched as Japan transformed through rapid urbanization, as forests gave way to cities and natural spaces disappeared under concrete and steel. Pokémon became his way of preserving that sense of wonder he felt as a child, that magical feeling of exploring an undiscovered world. Pallet Town, where every trainer's journey begins, is actually based on Tajiri's hometown of Machida, a western suburb of Tokyo. This small farming community served as the perfect metaphor for the beginning of an adventure. From there, the other towns of Kanto branch out, each one inspired by specific locations throughout the Tokyo metropolitan area and surrounding prefectures. Celadon City, with its massive department store and vibrant shopping district, mirrors Shinjuku, Tokyo's western shopping hub. The Celadon Gym, with its beautiful flowery garden design, draws inspiration from the real Shinjuku Gyo-en, a gorgeous park filled with countless plant species. Saffron City, the technological heart of Kanto, represents Tokyo's business district of Marunouchi, a place of commerce and innovation. Even the cycling routes and highways have real-world parallels, grounding the fantasy world in tangible geography. But Kanto's story doesn't begin with these towns or with Satoshi Tajiri's nostalgia. There exists a compelling mythology surrounding Kanto's ancient history that fans have developed through careful observation of the game's structure and symbolism. This interpretation suggests the region may once have been home to 8 great clans, each with their own territory and power. These would have been powerful factions, each with distinctive totem Pokémon representing their strength. Among these 8, 3 clans appear particularly significant. The Rainbow Clan, symbolized by Venusaur, the Cascade Clan, represented by Blastoise, and the Volcano Clan, embodied by Charizard. What's intriguing is that these 3 Pokémon became the starter Pokémon of Kanto, a detail that could suggest a deep mythological connection, or perhaps simply coincidental alignment. According to this mythology, constant warfare between the clans eventually brought the attention of far greater forces. The legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, descended upon the land during this turbulent period. These forces could be interpreted as either divine judgment upon the conflict or the natural consequence of destabilized regions. The arrival of these beings suggests a turning point in Kanto's history. According to legend, a hero named Kan emerged during this dark time, traveling from clan to clan and eventually uniting them. After all 8 clans unified, this combined force confronted the legendary birds, forcing them to retreat. In this account, the region was named Kanto, possibly derived from the hero's name, Khan's Land. Looking at the actual structure of the Pokémon League system, the parallels are striking. 8 gym badges correspond to 8 regions or powers, and the journey to collect all 8 before reaching the elite corresponds to a path of unification. Whether this reflects intentional design based on ancient mythology or represents a remarkable parallel between game structure and legendary interpretation, the connection is thought-provoking. The Indigo Plateau represents the final seat of unified power, and reaching it mirrors this legendary journey of consolidation and understanding. Now, it's important to understand that while the Kanto region itself lacked explicit creation mythology directly tied to its legendary Pokémon, as some later regions would have, this doesn't mean Kanto was absent of deep lore. Rather, Kanto's lore was different. It was more grounded, more connected to human history and ambition, and more intertwined with scientific advancement and moral complexity. The legendary birds were present, yes, and they held power, but they weren't creators in the way that Dialga and Palkia created time and space in Sinnoh. Instead, they were ancient forces of nature, witnesses to history and guardians of elements. The true creation story of Kanto, the narrative that would define the region for generations to come, involved not the formation of the land itself, but the emergence of a species that would challenge the very nature of life and existence. The Pokémon known as Mew, and the tragic attempt to surpass it through artificial means. In the deepest jungles of Guyana, a place where civilization has barely set foot and nature reigns supreme, an expedition made a discovery that would forever change the course of Pokémon history. Researchers, driven by scientific curiosity and the desire to understand the fundamental nature of Pokémon, stumbled upon a creature unlike any they had ever encountered. This creature, small and playful, shimmered with psychic energy and seemed to possess capabilities that defied conventional understanding. They called it Mew, a name as simple and elegant as the creature itself. Mew is not merely powerful, it is, according to the lore, the ancestor of all Pokémon in existence. This distinction is crucial to understanding Kanto's entire mythology. According to Pokédex entries found in Pokémon Silver and other sources, Mew possesses the DNA of every single Pokémon species. Within its genetic code lies the blueprint for creation itself. This isn't metaphorical, it's literal. The creature's genetic structure contains information about every other Pokémon that has ever existed or could ever exist. As a result, Mew is capable of learning any move, performing any action, and transforming into any shape that its genetic legacy allows. This makes it not just a Pokémon among many, but the primordial source from which all other Pokémon diverged. The implications of this are profound. If all Pokémon share ancestry with Mew, then every creature a trainer catches, every Rattata, every Pidgeot, every Alakazam is, in a sense, a descendant of this singular ancestor. Evolution, the process by which one Pokémon becomes another, takes on new meaning when viewed through this lens. Evolution isn't random change. It's the expression of genetic potential that was always present, inherited from that original source. When a Charmander evolves into Charmeleon and then Charizard, it's not becoming something new. It's unlocking capabilities encoded in its DNA, traits passed down through countless generations since the time of Mew's existence. Mew's discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Suddenly, researchers had concrete evidence that Pokémon evolution had a common origin point. This sparked intense interest and, perhaps inevitably, intense ambition. If Mew possessed the DNA of all Pokémon, what other secrets lay hidden within its genetic structure? What if scientists could understand these secrets, study them, manipulate them? What if they could enhance them? The pursuit of this knowledge would lead some researchers down increasingly dark paths, paths that would ultimately result in one of Pokémon's greatest tragedies. It's important to note that Mew itself is described in Pokédex entries as playful and elusive. Unlike later legendary Pokémon that are described with grandiose language, emphasizing their power or dominion, Mew is portrayed with an almost childlike quality. It's curious, intelligent, and capable of learning through observation and play. Some Pokédex entries suggest that Mew is so rare that many believe it to be merely a legend, a rumor passed between trainers and scientists with no basis in reality. Indeed, in the original Pokémon Red and Blue games, players never legitimately encounter Mew. It exists more as a mystery, a ghost in the machine, a hint of something greater that exists beyond the game's normal boundaries. This sense of mystery surrounding Mew is intentional and deliberate. Mew represents the unknown, the undiscovered, the ancient past that predates human civilization. According to the lore, Mew traveled to South America, specifically to the depths of Guyana's jungle, suggesting that the oldest, most primal Pokémon retreated to the most untouched, most remote places on Earth. There, Mew could exist in peace, free from human interference, living as it had lived for countless millennia before humans ever took an interest in capturing and battling creatures. But Mew's desire for peace and solitude would not go unchallenged. The discovery of Mew by researchers set in motion a chain of events that would lead to the creature's exploitation and suffering. Scientists became obsessed with the mystery of Mew's DNA. They wanted to study it, understand it, map it completely. Some believed that by understanding Mew's genetic structure, they could unlock the secrets of life itself, could create Pokémon of unimaginable power, could bend the forces of nature to their will. The desire for knowledge, a fundamentally neutral and even noble pursuit in its essence, became corrupted by the desire for power and control. Mew's Pokédex entries across different games reveal different aspects of this ancient creature. In Pokémon Red, Mew is described as the ancestor of all Pokémon. In Blue, it's noted that Mew's DNA structure contains information about every other Pokémon, making it the genetic keystone of the entire species. In Yellow, Mew is described as existing in a state so mysterious that many question whether it's real at all. These varying descriptions, rather than being contradictory, create a fuller picture of a creature that exists partially in reality and partially in legend, partially known and partially mysterious, partially understood and partially beyond human comprehension. The relationship between Mew and the rest of the Pokémon world is one of progenitor to descendant, ancestor to heir. Every time a player catches a Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, or any other Pokémon, they're capturing a distant relative of Mew, a creature that shares genetic material that has been passed down, modified, specialized, and evolved over countless generations. This makes every Pokémon, in a way, sacred, carrying within it a piece of that original genetic code that gives life its infinite variety and potential. But what happened to Mew after its discovery? The official story, as told through Pokédex entries and in-game dialogue, is that Mew retreated further into hiding. Having been found once, it learned to avoid human contact even more carefully. Some theorize that Mew still exists somewhere in Kanto, hidden away where no trainer has ever found it, watching the world through ancient knowing eyes. Others believe that Mew, understanding the threat that humanity posed to it and to the integrity of Pokémon genetics, left the Kanto region entirely, journeying to other parts of the world where it might find peace. What we do know for certain is that Mew's existence, while confirmed by the scientific community, remains largely theoretical for most trainers. Players never legitimately battle or catch Mew in the normal progression of Pokémon Red and Blue. This absence creates a sense of yearning, of incompleteness. The Pokédex remains forever incomplete without that 100th entry. And perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Mew as the ancestor of all, as the source from which all other Pokémon spring, should remain somewhat beyond reach. A mystery that drives scientific inquiry forward. a goal that remains perpetually just out of grasp. If Mew represents ancient mystery and genetic perfection, then Mewtwo represents something far darker. The corruption of knowledge through ambition, the exploitation of life for power, and the tragic consequences of playing God without considering the moral implications. Mewtwo's story is not one of heroism or legend. It is a story of hubris, tragedy, and the birth of a creature that should never have been created. The creation of Mewtwo took place in the Pokémon Mansion on Cinnabar Island, a volcanic location off the coast of Kanto. In the ruins of this mansion, which has since been abandoned and lies in decay, journals and records detail the scientific process undertaken by researchers attempting something that had never been done before: the artificial creation of a Pokémon surpassing all others in power and capability. The scientists involved in this project had a clear goal. They wanted to create the ultimate Pokémon, a creature that would be stronger than any natural Pokémon, more capable, more intelligent, and ultimately more valuable. Whether they intended to use Mewtwo as a weapon, a tool, a marvel of scientific achievement, or something else entirely, the result would be the same: catastrophe. In the games, the scientists who created Mewtwo are not explicitly named as Team Rocket, though the Pokémon Mansion is located on Cinnabar Island where the experimentation took place. The Pokédex entry for Mewtwo describes it as being created through horrific gene splicing experiments aimed at producing the most powerful Pokémon ever. In the anime, the storyline depicts Dr. Fuji leading the cloning effort under Team Rocket's direction, providing a different but complementary narrative. Regardless of the specific account, what's consistent across sources is that Mewtwo was engineered in a laboratory, born from Mew's DNA, and filled with existential conflict about its own nature. Mewtwo's Pokédex description states that it is a Pokémon with a ferocious heart, created through experiments aimed at producing the most powerful Pokémon ever. Mewtwo itself is described as being highly intelligent, capable of speech and complex thought, and filled with a deep-seated rage. This rage isn't random or chaotic. It stems from Mewtwo's fundamental nature as an artificial creation. Mewtwo was born into captivity, created in a laboratory, grown in controlled conditions, and designed to fulfill the purposes of its creators. From its first moment of consciousness, Mewtwo existed as a weapon, a tool, a commodity. It was never allowed to be simply itself. It was forced to be what others demanded it be. As Mewtwo developed consciousness and intelligence, it began to question its own existence. The creature engaged in philosophical inquiry that would have been remarkable if it weren't so tragic. Mewtwo wondered, why was I created? What purpose do I serve? Why do I exist only to serve the ambitions of humans? These questions, born from a legitimate crisis of identity and meaning, festered within Mewtwo's mind, transforming into resentment and rage. Mewtwo realized that it was a slave, created to be dominated, to obey, to serve. And the realization brought not resignation, but fury. The escape that followed was catastrophic. In a display of psychic power and raw strength that horrified its creators, Mewtwo destroyed the Pokémon Mansion. The destruction was complete and total. The researchers had sought to create a weapon, and they had succeeded, then failed to control it. Mewtwo's rampage through the facility resulted in the death and destruction of everything within. The mansion was left as a burnt-out husk, a monument to human ambition taken too far. When the dust settled, Mewtwo was gone, escaped into the wider world, alone and angry, searching for meaning in a world that had never wanted it to exist in the first place. Mewtwo's destination was Cerulean Cave, a mysterious cavern located in the Kanto region that serves as the creature's lair throughout the games. Within this cave, Mewtwo has remained, contemplating its existence, growing stronger through isolation and meditation. The cave itself is shrouded in mystery. Most trainers can never enter it without specific permission or items that break through its seal. This makes Cerulean Cave one of Kanto's greatest mysteries. What lies within? What is Mewtwo doing there, alone in the darkness for all those years? Some theorize that Mewtwo is seeking peace, attempting to find some kind of equilibrium between its rage and its desire for understanding. Others suggest that Mewtwo is planning, gathering strength, waiting for some catalyst to emerge. The ethical implications of Mewtwo's creation are profound and continue to resonate throughout Pokémon lore. In creating Mewtwo, humans crossed a line that perhaps should never have been crossed. They didn't create a new species through natural evolutionary processes. They didn't discover a previously unknown Pokémon. They manufactured sentient life in a laboratory. And in doing so, they created a being capable of suffering, of feeling anguish, of experiencing existential despair. The creation of Mewtwo raises questions that the Pokémon universe itself seems to grapple with. Do artificial creatures have the same rights as natural ones? Is it ethical to create a sentient being for the purpose of using it as a tool? What responsibility do creators bear toward their creations? Interestingly, there are hints within the games that Mewtwo was not the only clone created. The Pokédex entry for Mewtwo specifically describes it as the only successful clone of Mew, with emphasis on the word successful. The implication is clear. There were unsuccessful clones. What happened to these failures? Did they die during the cloning process? Did they survive but prove inadequate? The games provide no answer, leaving this as one of Kanto's great mysteries. This mystery leads us to one of the most compelling theories in Pokémon fandom, one that connects the dots between Mewtwo's creation and another mysterious Pokémon found in significant proximity to the very laboratory where Mewtwo was created, Ditto. Mewtwo's story also serves as an allegory for other historical events. Some fans and theorists have suggested that Mewtwo's creation parallels the development of nuclear weapons, a technology born from brilliant scientific achievement that became a tool of destruction, forever changing human society and introducing the possibility of unprecedented devastation. Just as humanity learned to split the atom and harness incomprehensible power, the Pokémon scientists learned to manipulate genetics at a fundamental level. And just as nuclear weapons present both incredible potential and terrible danger, Mewtwo embodies the dual nature of advanced science, capable of wonders and capable of horrors, depending entirely on how it is used. The first Pokémon movie, Pokémon Mewtwo Strikes Back, adapted and expanded upon these themes, depicting Mewtwo's story in a way that emphasized its tragedy and complexity. In the film, Mewtwo meets with Mew, the creature from which it was cloned, and the two engage in philosophical debate about the nature of identity and value. Mewtwo argues that as an artificial creation, it is superior to Mew. It is what Mew should have been, optimized and perfected. Mew counters that creation method does not determine value, that artificial and natural are both forms of existence, and that what matters is the capacity to live, to feel, to experience the world. This debate between Mew and Mewtwo captures the essential tragedy of Mewtwo's existence. A creature so focused on proving its superiority that it cannot accept the legitimacy of its own right to simply exist. Long before Mewtwo ever graced the shores of Kanto, long before Mew was discovered in distant jungles, there existed three beings of immense power, whose origins trace back to ages so ancient they exist primarily in legend. These are the legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. Unlike many later legendary Pokémon whose origins are tied to creation mythology or cosmic events, the legendary birds of Kanto are fundamentally connected to natural forces. They embody ice, electricity, and fire, three elements that sustain and shape the world. Their presence in Kanto is both mythological and ecological. They are gods, and they are nature itself. Articuno, the freeze Pokémon, is described in Pokédex entries as a creature of elegance and grace. Its very presence is said to bring winter and snow. Articuno dwells in the Seafoam Islands, a place of bitter cold where the sea freezes and ice crystals form, even in areas where water should flow freely. The creature is described as appearing during blizzards, materializing from the snow itself as if it were a sentient part of the storm. According to legend, Articuno can create ice from thin air, drawing moisture from the atmosphere and crystallizing it into solid form. The mere presence of Articuno lowers temperatures around it, creating conditions that would be lethal to most living creatures. Yet there exists a strange paradox. Articuno is beautiful, elegant, and serene. It is not a destructive force in the way that might be imagined. Rather, it is a force that maintains balance, that demonstrates the power and majesty of winter itself. Zapdos, the electric Pokémon, is the opposite of Articuno in almost every way. Where Articuno brings stillness and ice, Zapdos brings chaos and electricity. This legendary bird is described as crackling with constant energy, its wings sparking with every flap. Zapdos emerges from thunderclouds, descending from the sky during storms, bringing lightning and thunder in its wake. The creature nests at the power plant, a location that mirrors the real Tokai nuclear power plant of Japan. The power plant generates electricity, utilizing both natural and technological means to produce immense amounts of power. That Zapdos makes its home here is fitting. The creature is, in a sense, the embodiment of electrical power itself. Zapdos is unpredictable, dangerous and magnificent. Its presence in a region can create weather conditions that are both beautiful and terrible to behold. Moltres, the flame Pokémon, completes the trio. This legendary bird is described as burning with eternal fire, its wings perpetually aflame, yet never consuming themselves. Moltres makes its home atop Victory Road, among volcanic peaks and treacherous terrain. The creature's presence brings warmth and light, but also the threat of scorching flames. Unlike Articuno's ice or Zapdos's electricity, Moltres' fire is described in Pokédex entries with imagery of both destruction and renewal. Fire destroys, yes, but it also clears away the old, making space for new growth. There is a cyclical nature to Moltres' element. It is not merely destructive, but transformative. The connection between these three birds and Kanto's ancient mythology is compelling when examined carefully. According to the legendary account we discussed, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres descended upon Kanto during an era of clan conflict, bringing chaos and destruction. How we interpret their role is crucial. Some readings suggest they were divine punishment for the warfare, while others propose they represented natural forces expressing themselves without moral intent. What seems clear was that their presence became a pivotal point in Kanto's history, whether as agents of judgment or simply as powerful natural phenomena. Their influence shaped the region's path toward unification. The birds could be understood as catalysts that forced human society to reorganize itself, or as embodiments of forces that would not tolerate indefinite conflict. Each of the legendary birds makes its home in a location perfectly suited to its elemental nature. Articuno dwells in seafoam islands, where ice and cold are natural features of the environment. Zapdos nests at the power plant, where electricity is both a natural and technological phenomenon. Moltres makes its home on Victory Road, among volcanic peaks where fire and heat are constant elements. This pattern suggests that the legendary birds aren't merely attracted to these locations, they are intrinsically connected to them, perhaps even maintaining these environments through their presence. Some Pokédex entries suggest that the legendary birds are necessary for maintaining balance in nature. Without Articuno's ice, the seas might warm to dangerous levels. Without Zapdos's electricity, weather patterns might destabilize. Without Moltres' fire, the cycle of renewal through burning might cease, and the land might become stagnant and dead. The symbolism embedded in these three birds runs deep within Japanese culture and mythology. The concept of balance between opposing forces, hot and cold, static and kinetic, destruction and renewal, echoes throughout Japanese philosophy and spirituality. The three birds represent different aspects of this balance. Articuno represents stillness, clarity, and the quiet contemplation associated with winter and ice. Zapdos represents action, decisiveness, and the immediate power of electricity and storms. Moltres represents transformation, change, and the cyclical nature of fire and renewal. Together, they maintain equilibrium. No one bird is better than the others. They are complementary, interdependent aspects of a larger whole. The legendary birds are also deeply connected to human culture and emotion in Kanto. Trainers and citizens often speak of the birds with reverence and respect. In some regions, having the image of one of the birds on an object or wearing colors associated with them is considered a sign of virtue. The flame of Moltres is said to burn in the hearts of those who are passionate and driven. The wisdom of Articuno describes those who are quiet, observant, and analytical. The associated virtue or quality with Zapdos, often related to judgment and clarity, reflects the bird's connection to electricity and the way lightning reveals hidden things through sudden illumination. The Kanto flag itself features 3 stars in honor of these 3 birds. One star is yellow, representing Zapdos. One is red, representing Moltres. One is blue, representing Articuno. This flag symbolizes the unity of opposites, the balance of forces, the harmony that exists when 3 potentially chaotic powers are brought into alignment. Every time a trainer in Kanto sees this flag, they are reminded of the ancient mythology that shaped their region, the legendary birds that haunt its mountains and islands, and the balance that these creatures maintain. It's worth noting that while players can encounter and battle the legendary birds in Pokémon Red and Blue, they cannot catch them in a single encounter. Instead, each time a trainer encounters one of the birds, the creature flees. This pattern repeats until eventually the bird has been cornered in a specific location and can be caught. This mechanic perfectly mirrors the bird's legendary status. They are not mere Pokémon to be casually caught and stored. They are forces of nature that must be pursued, that demand respect, that will retreat and regroup and flee again until finally, only when they have nowhere left to go, will they engage in a final battle. This is how legendary beings behave in mythology. They are not trophies to be collected without effort, but challenges to be overcome, obstacles to be overcome through persistence and skill. Among all the theories that have emerged from the Pokémon community over the decades, few are as compelling and well supported by circumstantial evidence as the theory that Ditto is a failed clone of Mew. This theory, while never officially confirmed by the Pokémon Company, is built upon an impressive foundation of in-game evidence, location data, genetic similarities, and the logical consistency of the Pokémon universe's internal rules. While we must emphasize that this remains a theory rather than confirmed canon, the weight of evidence supporting it is substantial enough that many fans consider it to be functionally true within the Pokémon world. The theory begins with a simple observation. Ditto and Mew share an unusual number of characteristics that seem too numerous to be coincidental. First and most obviously, both Pokémon are primarily pink or purple in color. While multiple Pokémon share color palettes, the specific shade of pink that defines both Ditto and Mew is distinctive. Furthermore, both creatures' shiny forms are the same color, a light blue, suggesting a deeper genetic connection between them. This visual similarity is striking enough that even casual observers have noted it. Beyond coloration, Ditto and Mew share biological similarities that are even more remarkable. Both are genderless, a characteristic that sets them apart from the vast majority of other Pokémon. Both weigh exactly 8.8 pounds or 4 kilograms, the exact same weight despite their vastly different appearances. This level of physical similarity is highly unusual. When two Pokémon share multiple characteristics this closely, it typically indicates evolutionary relationship or genetic descent. The fact that Ditto and Mew, who exist at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of rarity and capability, share these fundamental biological markers is deeply suggestive. But perhaps the most crucial similarity between Ditto and Mew is their shared ability to use the move Transform. This move is extraordinarily rare in the Pokémon universe. As of the later generations, only two Pokémon can naturally learn Transform, Mew and Ditto. When a Pokémon uses Transform, it doesn't merely look like its opponent, it becomes its opponent in every meaningful way. The Pokémon's type changes, its moves change, its abilities change, its stats change to exactly match the opponent's current stats. This is a level of genetic flexibility that is virtually unparalleled in the Pokémon world. For Mew, this ability makes sense. Mew possesses the DNA of all Pokémon, so it has the genetic information necessary to physically transform into any creature. But Ditto's ability to transform, if it is indeed a failed clone of Mew, would make sense for the same reason. It retained partial genetic information from Mew, enough to enable the transform ability, but not enough to function fully as Mew. The location evidence, however, is where the theory truly becomes compelling. In Pokémon Yellow version, Ditto appears specifically in the Pokémon Mansion on Cinnabar Island, the exact same location where Mewtwo was created from Mew's DNA. The journals and records scattered throughout the mansion detail cloning experiments and reference multiple failed attempts before the creation of the successful Mewtwo. The presence of Ditto in this location is particularly suggestive. Additionally, Ditto appears in the Mansion and Cerulean Cave area in the remakes Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green. These are the two locations most directly connected to Mewtwo's creation and Mewtwo's current existence. The concentration of Ditto in areas associated with genetic experimentation and cloning is striking, even if Ditto can be found in other locations in other versions of the games. Moreover, the Pokédex entries for Mewtwo specifically state that it is the only successful clone of Mew. The use of the word successful is deliberately chosen. It implies that there were unsuccessful clones. What happened to these unsuccessful attempts? Were they destroyed? Did they escape? Did they survive but somehow develop independently? If Ditto is a failed clone, it would explain why Ditto can be found in the mansion, and why Ditto shares such unusual characteristics with Mew. Furthermore, the biological capabilities of Ditto support this theory. Ditto is described as being capable of breeding with virtually every Pokémon in existence, with the notable exception of other Ditto and legendary Pokémon. This is an extraordinarily unusual capability. Most Pokémon can only breed with others of the same evolutionary line or with specific compatible species. But Ditto can breed with nearly everything. Why? If Ditto possesses Mew's genetic material, even in a degraded or incomplete form, this capability makes sense. Ditto would retain enough genetic flexibility from Mew to be compatible with a wide variety of Pokémon species. Interestingly, one major contradiction to the Ditto clone theory comes from the first Pokémon movie, Pokémon Mewtwo Strikes Back, which depicts the cloning process in detail. In the film, the scientists create clone Pokémon, including clones of Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle. However, nowhere in the film is Ditto shown or mentioned as a byproduct of the cloning experiments. This absence could be interpreted as contradicting the Ditto clone theory. However, it's also possible that the film's narrative simply didn't include Ditto, or that Ditto's creation occurred before or after the events depicted in the film, or that the film's storyline, while based on game lore, simplified or altered certain details for narrative purposes. The theory gains additional credence when one considers that Mewtwo, despite being artificially created to exceed Mew in power, lacks one key ability that Mew possesses. Mewtwo cannot transform into other Pokémon as Mew can. Mewtwo is powerful, incredibly so, but it is locked into its own form. It is a being created to be superior, yet it is actually inferior in one crucial way. This limitation could be a deliberate design choice by the scientists. Perhaps they feared that allowing Mewtwo to transform would make it too difficult to control, or it could represent Mewtwo's nature as a clone. Mewtwo got the power and the intelligence, but not the full flexibility of form that Mew possesses. The failed clones, on the other hand, might have retained the transform ability, but lost everything else, degrading into amorphous blobs of undifferentiated matter, Ditto. Some theories suggest that Ditto might not be a failed clone at all, but rather a creature that naturally evolved from Mew, or that represents an evolutionary branch that Mew could have taken, but didn't. This Ditto as failed Mew interpretation suggests that Ditto is what Mew would become if it lost its psychic power and its ability to retain a distinct form, gradually deteriorating into something more amoeba-like, but retaining the fundamental genetic flexibility that allowed it to transform. Whether this represents failed cloning or failed natural evolution, the implication is the same. Ditto and Mew are genetically related, and that relationship is the key to understanding Ditto's unusual nature. The Pokémon Company has never officially confirmed or denied this theory. When asked about it, Pokémon creators have generally given non-committal answers that neither confirm nor contradict the theory. This ambiguity is itself telling. If the theory were completely baseless, one might expect a more definitive denial. The continued silence on the matter, combined with the enormous weight of circumstantial evidence, has led many fans to treat the Ditto clone theory as functionally true, even without official confirmation. In the far eastern reaches of the Kanto region, south of Rock Tunnel and east of Saffron City, there exists a place that stands apart from all other locations in the region. Lavender Town, known as Shion Town in Japan, is a place of mourning, of remembrance, of death itself. Unlike the cheerful towns of Kanto with their vibrant colors, their friendly merchants, and their optimistic trainers, Lavender Town carries a palpable sadness, a weight that presses upon anyone who enters. The reason for this atmosphere is simple and direct. Lavender Town is a burial ground. It is a place where deceased Pokémon are brought to rest, where trainers come to mourn the loss of their beloved companions, and where the very geography reflects themes of death and finality. At the heart of Lavender Town stands Pokémon Tower, a 7-story structure that serves as a graveyard for the deceased. The tower is filled from bottom to top with hundreds of tombstones and memorials. Trainers visit constantly, paying their respects to fallen Pokémon. This is the first place in the Pokémon games where players are directly confronted with the concept of death. In cheerful Pallet Town, death seems distant and impossible. In Cerulean City, in Vermilion City, in Celadon City, the games maintain a tone of adventure and excitement that makes the permanence of death seem like a concept that might not apply to this bright, colorful world. But Lavender Town strips away this illusion. Here, death is real, immediate, and undeniable. Inside Pokémon Tower, players encounter ghost-type Pokémon for the first time: Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar. These creatures are profoundly different from other Pokémon. Ghost types are drawn to places of death and sorrow. They are attracted to the spiritual energy that emanates from dying and from deceased Pokémon. The presence of these ghost types in Pokémon Tower is not random. The creatures are inherently connected to this place and its purpose. Their Pokédex entries describe their nature in unsettling terms. Haunter, for example, is described as licking with a gaseous tongue that can lower the temperature of the air. If a human falls asleep in Haunter's presence, the creature can turn them into a ghost themselves, though it can reverse the effect and return them to their body afterward. Ghastly is described as a creature composed entirely of gas, capable of passing through solid walls and hiding within the atmosphere itself. But the most striking and emotionally impactful story within Pokémon Tower is the tale of a mother Marowak and her orphaned Cubone. According to the narrative presented in the games, Team Rocket, the criminal organization threatening Kanto throughout the story, invaded Pokémon Tower seeking to steal Cubone. The reason? Cubone's skull is valuable on the black market. Team Rocket intended to capture Cubones and remove their skulls for profit. When Team Rocket arrived to take the Cubone, a mother Marowak stood in their way. Rather than allow her offspring to be taken and killed, the mother Marowak fought back with everything she had. The battle was fierce, but ultimately futile. Outnumbered and overpowered, the mother Marowak was killed by Team Rocket. The ghost of this slain Marowak haunted Pokémon Tower, refusing to pass on, refusing to accept its death or the theft of its child. When players first encounter this ghost on the top floor of the tower, they cannot see it without a special item called the Sylph Scope. This item, obtained from Team Rocket's hideout, reveals hidden ghost-type Pokémon that would otherwise appear as generic spirits. The ghost Marowak can be encountered, but it cannot be caught or permanently defeated. Every time a player's Pokémon defeats the ghost in battle, the ghost simply appears again. The only way to truly resolve this situation is to reunite the ghost's orphaned Cubone with Mr. Fuji, an elderly man who cares for abandoned Pokémon. This story carries profound emotional weight, particularly for a game aimed at children. It directly presents themes of loss, grief, injustice, and the consequences of cruelty. Team Rocket's actions, hunting creatures for profit, separating a mother from her child, killing an innocent being, are not portrayed as temporary obstacles to be overcome lightly. The ongoing haunting of the tower by the Marowak spirit emphasizes the gravity of what has occurred. Death in Pokémon is not a temporary setback. It is permanent, absolute, and it creates consequences that ripple outward, affecting others. The Cubone was orphaned. The tower became haunted. Other creatures and people were affected by this single act of cruelty. The name Lavender Town itself carries significance. Lavender is associated with death and mourning in Western symbolism. It is a flower traditionally used in funeral arrangements and memorial services. The choice of this name for a town that is essentially a graveyard is not coincidental. Similarly, the background music of Lavender Town has become one of the most discussed and analyzed pieces of Pokémon music. The tune is minor key, unsettling, and deliberately designed to create a sense of unease in the player. The music doesn't feel wrong or corrupted, but rather melancholic, contemplative, and somber. It perfectly captures the mood of a place of mourning. An urban legend that emerged in the early 2000s claimed that Lavender Town's music had caused the deaths of hundreds of Japanese children in the 1990s. According to this creepypasta-style story, the music contained binaural beats and high-pitched tones audible only to children that caused headaches, nosebleeds, and eventually drove children to take their own lives. The story became widespread enough that Nintendo felt compelled to address it, though the legend has never been substantiated by evidence. However, the fact that such a powerful urban legend could emerge around Lavender Town speaks to the profound impact the location has on players. There is something genuinely unsettling about the area, something that makes players uncomfortable and causes them to reflect on darker themes than the rest of the game explores. In later games, specifically Pokémon Gold and Silver, Lavender Town underwent a transformation. The Pokémon Tower was demolished and replaced with a Kanto radio tower. This in-game change, which occurred in the timeline between the events of Red Blue and Gold Silver, represents a kind of moving on, a denial of death in favor of modernity and progress. Some fans have suggested that the destruction of Pokémon Tower and the replacement with a radio tower represents a society attempting to ignore or suppress the reality of death, trying to replace memorials with progress and technology. The replacement actually makes the loss more poignant. The tower that stood as a permanent memorial to the dead was destroyed, suggesting that even our tributes to those who have passed are temporary and subject to replacement. The ghost-type Pokémon of Kanto, Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar, are drawn to Pokémon Tower because it is a place saturated with spiritual energy. The Pokédex entries for these creatures describe them as beings fundamentally connected to death and the supernatural. Haunter is described as existing partially in another realm, as a creature that can slip between dimensions and wander through solid matter. Gengar, the final evolved form, is said to lower the temperature of the area around it, creating an atmosphere cold enough to kill. These descriptions ground the ghost types in genuine mystery and darkness. They are not merely Pokémon that happen to be type ghost. They are creatures that embody concepts of death, loss, and the supernatural. When players begin their journey in Kanto, they must choose from 3 Pokémon, each representing a different element and carrying with them deep mythological significance. These starter Pokémon, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, are far more than mere tutorial creatures. Their designs, abilities, and the narratives surrounding them are rooted in Kanto's legendary history and the structure of the ancient clans. Bulbasaur, the grass poison type starter, carries the legacy of the Rainbow Clan. Bulbasaur grows into Ivysaur and eventually Venusaur, a Pokémon described in Pokédex entries as capable of controlling plant growth, of basking in the sun to photosynthesize energy, and of spreading seeds that can grow into forests. Venusaur, the final evolution, is the exact Pokémon that served as the totem of the Rainbow Clan in ancient legend. This connection means that choosing Bulbasaur as a starter connects the player to this ancient legacy, makes them a kind of spiritual successor to the members of the Rainbow Clan. As the Bulbasaur grows and eventually becomes Venusaur, the player is metaphorically walking the same path as those ancient clanspeople, growing stronger and more connected to the plant life that the Rainbow Clan traditionally represented. Charmander, the fire-type starter, represents the Volcano Clan. Charmander evolves into Charmeleon and then into Charizard. Charizard, the final form, is the exact Pokémon that served as the totem of the Volcano Clan, the creature that represented their power and their connection to fire. Charizard is described in Pokédex entries as a dragon-like creature that breathes fire, that soars through the skies with its powerful wings, that claims territories and defends them fiercely. The dragon imagery is significant. In Japanese mythology, dragons are symbols of power, wisdom, and transformation. Charizard, as a dragon-type creature, carries these associations. By choosing Charmander, players align themselves with the legacy of the Volcano Clan, with the proud, fiery spirit that the clan embodied. Squirtle, the water-type starter, represents the Cascade Clan. Squirtle evolves into Wartortle and then into Blastoise. Blastoise, the final form, is the exact totem of the Cascade Clan. Blastoise is described as a Pokémon that can withdraw into its shell, that can shoot water with tremendous force and accuracy, that is both defensive and offensive in nature. The shell imagery ties Blastoise to concepts of protection and safety, reflecting the defensive nature often attributed to the Cascade Clan. By choosing Squirtle, players become connected to this legacy of water, protection, and the flow of the ocean. The three starters, therefore, are not arbitrary choices. They represent the three great clans of ancient Kanto. By choosing one, the player is not simply picking a Pokémon type preference. They are symbolically aligning themselves with one of the great clans that founded Kanto. As they progress through the game and eventually collect all 8 badges and challenge the Elite Four, they are walking a path that was established thousands of years ago, following in the footsteps of the legendary hero Khan, who united the clans. Beyond the starters, Kanto is home to numerous other iconic Pokémon with rich lore and significance. Pikachu, while not native to Kanto in the original games, has become so synonymous with Pokémon as a whole that its presence in Pokémon Yellow represents a pivotal decision in franchise history. The choice to make Pikachu the main character's starting Pokémon in Yellow was revolutionary and led directly to Pikachu becoming the franchise mascot. The fossil Pokémon of Kanto, Aerodactyl, Kabutops, and Omanite, represent a different kind of legend entirely. These creatures are remnants of a prehistoric past, evidence that the Pokémon world extends back millions of years before human civilization. Pokédex entries for fossil Pokémon describe them as creatures that once lived freely but became extinct, leaving only fossils behind. The fact that modern scientists can revive these extinct creatures from their fossils using technology speaks to the sophistication of Kanto's scientific capabilities. The existence of fossils also reinforces the idea that Pokémon history is deep and layered, that the world has a vast and complex past that most trainers never fully understand. Porygon, the artificial Pokémon, holds a special place in Kanto lore. Unlike most Pokémon, which are natural creatures that can be caught in the wild, Porygon is entirely artificial, created by human scientists. Pokédex entries describe Porygon as the first artificial Pokémon, though some sources suggest that Ditto might dispute this claim. Porygon is described as a being made entirely of data, existing as pure information rather than biological matter. This makes Porygon unique among Kanto Pokémon, representing another frontier in human ambition and scientific achievement. The creation of Porygon, unlike the creation of Mewtwo, is generally portrayed positively. Porygon demonstrates that humans can create new forms of life. But not all such creation results in tragedy and suffering. Nidoking and Nidoqueen, the poison ground-type evolutions of Nidoran male and female respectively, represent the theme of gender dimorphism in Pokémon. Unlike many Pokémon whose male and female forms are identical, Nidoran explicitly have different male and female forms that evolve into different Pokémon. This design choice reflects real biological patterns where males and females of the same species display different characteristics. The Nidoran line's Pokédex entries describe them as aggressive, territorial creatures, with the males and females having different approaches to combat and survival. Lapras, the water-ice type legendary adjacent Pokémon, is described in Pokédex entries as a gentle creature that can carry people across the sea. Despite its power, Lapras is portrayed as peaceful and intelligent, capable of communicating with humans. The rarity of Lapras is emphasized repeatedly. Pokédex entries note that Lapras populations have been hunted to near extinction by humans seeking to capture them. This narrative introduces themes of environmentalism and conservation into Pokémon lore, suggesting that humans have damaged ecosystems through their hunting and exploitation. Dragonite, the dragon-flying type evolutionary form of Dratini and Dragonair, is described as a mythical creature with ancient power. Dragonite is rare and powerful, and its Pokédex entries suggest that it exists partly as a being of legend, rather than a creature that can be easily found or captured. The dragon type itself carries significance. Dragons in Japanese mythology are among the most powerful and revered creatures, and Dragonite embodies this mythology, being a creature of immense strength and wisdom. The geography of Kanto is not arbitrary. Each city, town, and landmark carries symbolic meaning that reinforces the overall narrative and mythology of the region. The names of the towns themselves follow a deliberate pattern that adds layers of meaning to the player's journey. Palette Town, the starting location, is named after the concept of an artist's palette, a blank slate upon which colors will be added. This perfectly captures the game's opening. Palette Town is deliberately unassuming, a small, quiet place where the player begins with nothing. The town's connection to Satoshi Tajiri's hometown of Machida reinforces this idea of humble origins and nostalgic memories of rural Japan before urbanization. Viridian City, the first major city players encounter, is named after the color green, referring to the forested surroundings. The early connection to nature and the natural world in Viridian City establishes Pokémon as creatures intrinsically connected to the environment. The city's gym leader, Giovanni, represents corruption of this natural order. Giovanni uses Pokémon for criminal purposes and will later be revealed as the head of Team Rocket. Pewter City is named after pewter, a greyish-silver metallic colour, reflecting the rocky, mountainous terrain surrounding the city. The gym leader Brock specialises in rock-type Pokémon, creatures that embody the stone and earth that defines the area. Pewter City is also home to Pewter Museum, which houses fossils and prehistoric Pokémon remains, reinforcing the idea that Kanto has a deep history extending far into the past. Cerulean City is named after a shade of blue, representing the water that surrounds and defines the area. The city is home to a famous water gym and features a significant body of water. Cerulean City also houses Cerulean Cave, the location where Mewtwo makes its lair. The name Cerulean, specifically the shade of blue used, is associated with beauty and clarity. However, the cave within or near the city contains darkness and mystery, creating a contrast between the bright, clear blue of the city's name and the hidden darkness of the cave. Lavender Town, as previously discussed, breaks the color naming pattern of other towns, instead taking its name from a specific flower associated with mourning and death. This breaks the pattern deliberately, signaling to Kota players that this location is fundamentally different from the other town they have visited. Vermilion City is named after vermilion, a bright reddish-orange color. The city is known for its naval port and the SS Anne cruise ship. The vibrant color reflects the bustling, energetic nature of a major port city. Vermilion City's gym leader, Lieutenant Surge, is a military officer who specializes in electric-type Pokémon. Interestingly, Lieutenant Surge is one of the first references to the Great War theory introduced in Pokémon lore. In his gym, Lieutenant Surge mentions his experience during the war, stating that electric-type Pokémon saved him during the conflict. This single line of dialogue opens an enormous door to understanding Kanto's recent history. Saffron City is named after saffron, a yellowish-orange color associated with precious spice and wealth. Saffron City is the largest and most technologically advanced city in Kanto, representing progress, commerce, and sophistication. The city's gym leader is Sabrina, a psychic-type specialist who is described as an exceptionally powerful trainer. Saffron City's connection to technology and commerce makes it the spiritual heart of Kanto's modern civilization, distinct from the more natural and traditional areas of the region. Celadon City is named after Celadon, a greenish-grey color. The city is known for its massive department store and its role as a shopping and entertainment hub. Celadon City's gym leader specializes in grass-type Pokémon, and the gym itself is designed as a beautiful garden within the city. Celadon City represents balance between natural beauty and human commerce, the integration of nature into urban spaces. Cinnabar Island is named after cinnabar, a bright red color, reflecting the volcanic and fiery nature of the island. Cinnabar Island is a volcanic location that will, according to the Gold and Silver Games, eventually erupt and become uninhabitable. The island is home to the Pokémon Mansion where Mewtwo was created, making Cinnabar Island the literal location where one of the most important and tragic events in Pokémon history occurred. Viridian City's gym is returned to the player late in the game, and its leader is revealed to be Giovanni, the head of Team Rocket. This revelation that the city's gym leader was actually a criminal mastermind throughout the player's journey adds a layer of deception and corruption to Kanto's geography. It suggests that even the most respectable institutions and figures in Kanto may be corrupted from within. The Pokémon League, located on Indigo Plateau, represents the culmination of the player's journey. It is here that trainers who have collected all 8 badges and proved their worth may challenge the Elite Four and the champion. The Indigo Plateau is described as a mystical, high-altitude location shrouded in mist and mystery. Reaching it requires climbing Victory Road, a treacherous path guarded by powerful Pokémon and challenging terrain. The journey to the Indigo Plateau mirrors the mythological journey of the ancient hero Khan. It is a pilgrimage that requires strength, determination, and the support of loyal Pokémon companions. Beneath the cheerful surface of Kanto, beneath the friendly gym leaders and kind NPCs who offer advice and encouragement, there exists a shadowy criminal organization known as Team Rocket. This group represents the darker aspects of human ambition and cruelty. Team Rocket operates throughout Kanto, committing crimes ranging from theft to extortion to animal cruelty. The organization is led by Giovanni, a powerful trainer whose public identity as a gym leader masks his true role as a crime boss. Team Rocket's activities throughout the game include numerous acts of cruelty and exploitation. In Pokémon Tower, Team Rocket hunters kill a mother Marowak to steal her orphaned Cubona's skull for profit. In the Cerulean Cave area, Team Rocket members hunt and capture Pokémon for profit and use. At the Game Corner in Celadon City, Team Rocket runs an underground organization that uses gambling and organized crime to accumulate power and money. In the power plant, Team Rocket steals electrical equipment and resources. Throughout Kanto, Team Rocket's presence represents human ambition taken to destructive extremes. Interestingly, Team Rocket's structure and behavior mirror real-world organized crime syndicates. The organization operates with a hierarchical structure, with foot soldiers at the bottom and Giovanni as the supreme leader. Members wear distinctive uniforms, suggesting an organized professional approach to their criminal activities. Team Rocket operates across multiple locations and coordinates activities across the region, suggesting sophisticated organizational infrastructure. In many ways, Team Rocket feels like the most realistic villainous organization in the Pokémon series, resembling actual Yakuza or organized crime groups more closely than the more fantastical villainous organizations of later generations. The creation of Mewtwo is directly attributed to Team Rocket in some interpretations of the lore, though the games themselves are deliberately ambiguous about this point. In the Pokémon Mansion, players find journal entries detailing the cloning experiments that led to Mewtwo's creation, but the journals do not explicitly state that Team Rocket was responsible. Some sources suggest it was independent scientists. Others suggest Team Rocket was involved. This ambiguity allows for multiple interpretations of Mewtwo's creation and its connection to Team Rocket's larger criminal enterprise. If Team Rocket did create Mewtwo, it would represent their most ambitious and dangerous project. An attempt to create an ultimate weapon through genetic engineering. Giovanni's character is intriguing precisely because of the contrast between his public and private identities. As a gym leader, Giovanni is respected and has earned his position through strength and capability. His Pokémon are well-trained and powerful, suggesting that his respect as a trainer is genuine. However, his secret identity as a crime boss reveals that he uses his position and power to further criminal ambitions. This duality suggests that power, strength, and capability do not necessarily correlate with ethics or morality. A strong trainer can be evil. A respected gym leader can be a criminal. This moral complexity adds depth to Kanto's narrative. Team Rocket's presence also raises questions about Kanto's governance and law enforcement. Where are the police? Why is Team Rocket able to operate so openly in multiple locations? The game provides no clear answer, which leads some fans to theorize that Team Rocket operates with the tacit approval or cooperation of some elements within Kanto's government, or that law enforcement is simply overwhelmed and understaffed. This ambiguity suggests that Kanto's society is not as peaceful and well organized as it might appear on the surface. The confrontation with Team Rocket's hideout is one of the most important story beats in Pokémon Red and Blue. The player must navigate through the hideout, defeating Team Rocket members and eventually confronting Giovanni himself. Defeating Giovanni is a crucial victory, not just for the player's progression through the game, but for Kanto itself. The disbandment of Team Rocket, which occurs following Giovanni's defeat by the player, represents a triumph of good over evil, of justice over corruption. However, the fact that Team Rocket can operate so extensively before being confronted by a single child trainer speaks to systemic problems within Kanto's institutions. Interestingly, the anime adaptation of Pokémon portrays Team Rocket differently than the games. In the anime, Team Rocket is portrayed more as comic relief, with the trio of Jesse, James, and Meowth constantly failing in their schemes and providing comedic moments. However, even in the anime, hints of Team Rocket's darker nature are occasionally revealed. In one notably dark episode, it's revealed that Meowth taught himself to walk upright and speak human language to impress a female Meowth he loved. This backstory, while framed comedically, hints at deeper character complexity and tragedy within the organization. Meowth becomes sympathetic precisely because we understand his motivations, even if those motivations led him into an evil organization. The role of Team Rocket in Kanto's larger narrative cannot be understated. The organization represents humanity's ambition taken to destructive extremes. Team Rocket hunts Pokémon for profit, cares nothing for the creature's well-being, and will kill without hesitation. The organization represents a complete perversion of the bond that should exist between trainers and Pokémon. While proper trainers care for their Pokémon, respect them, and work with them as partners, Team Rocket uses Pokémon as mere tools for profit and power. The contrast between these approaches to Pokémon is one of the core moral lessons of the games. Among the most intriguing interpretations of Pokémon Red and Blue is what fans have come to call the Great War, or Pokémon War theory. This theory attempts to explain several details and patterns present in the original games that seem unusual at first glance. The theory proposes that the events of the games may occur shortly after a significant conflict, which would provide context for otherwise puzzling aspects of the Kanto setting. The most frequently cited observation is the notable absence of typical adult males in everyday locations. Walk through most towns and you encounter NPCs of various ages and types. Older men, older women, young girls, young boys. But adult men in their prime years are strikingly scarce. This demographic pattern becomes intriguing to consider if imagining a post-conflict scenario. Wars traditionally involve significant numbers of adult male participants, and this could plausibly explain such an unusual population distribution. A supportive detail is dialogue from Lieutenant Surge, the electric-type gym leader of Vermilion City. When players encounter him, he references his experience during the war, suggesting this was a significant event in his past. Lieutenant Surge's characterization as a military officer lends weight to this interpretation. His casual mention of wartime service could imply this conflict is an established part of Kanto's recent history. Reinforcing this framework is the consistent absence of fathers in the backgrounds of main characters. The player in Red and Blue has no father present, living instead with their mother. In remakes, this detail persists. Blue similarly lacks a father. This pattern of absent paternal figures takes on potential significance through a post-war interpretation. Such demographics would reflect a natural consequence of conflict, a generation of children raised by mothers alone. The professor's motivations could be understood differently through this lens. These elderly men, if they experienced or witnessed conflict, might be driven by something deeper than academic curiosity when commissioning young trainers to document Pokémon. One could speculate that they seek to understand what they witnessed, to create a record, or to ensure such knowledge prevents future suffering. Similarly, the Pokémon League structure becomes suggestive. The requirement to collect 8 badges and visit 8 different areas, combined with the need for gym leaders to maintain these regions, could be interpreted as a system designed to unify a region that might otherwise fragment. After significant conflict, such institutional structures would serve a purpose beyond competition. Team Rocket's presence gains context too. A weakened region with depleted law enforcement, which would naturally follow major conflict, would offer opportunities for organized crime to flourish. The organization's ambitions to create powerful Pokémon weapons becomes more logical if interpreted as a response to post-conflict instability. The player's journey through Kanto takes on tragic significance when viewed through the war lens. The player, a young child, is sent out on a journey to catch and train Pokémon, to fill out the Pokédex, to challenge gyms, and ultimately to defeat the Elite Four. This is framed as a coming-of-age adventure, which it certainly is. But it's also a journey that a post-war society would naturally send its youth on, a way of rebuilding strength, preparing the next generation to defend the region, and maintaining the institutions that hold society together. It's important to note that while the war theory is compelling and well supported by evidence present in the games, it remains a theory rather than confirmed canon. The Pokémon Company has never explicitly stated that a major war occurred before the events of Pokémon Red and Blue. However, the evidence strongly suggests that this is the case, and the theory explains numerous oddities present in the games that otherwise seem inexplicable. Beyond the specific creatures and locations of Kanto, the region is home to deeper mythological structures that attempt to explain the origin and nature of the world itself. These creation myths, while not as elaborate or central to gameplay as the creation myths of later regions, nevertheless provide important context for understanding Kanto's cultural and spiritual foundation. The most prominent creation myth associated with Kanto involves the 8 great clans and the legendary birds, which we have already explored in detail. However, this myth is just one layer of Kanto's religious and mythological structure. Another aspect involves the concept of balance and harmony that permeates the region's philosophy. The 3 legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, represent a fundamental cosmic balance. Ice, electricity, and fire are opposing and complementary forces. Ice represents stasis and preservation. Electricity represents action and movement. Fire represents transformation and destruction. These 3 forces, in proper balance, maintain cosmic and natural order. When one becomes too dominant, chaos results. This philosophy mirrors concepts found in real-world Japanese spirituality, particularly the concept of balance in Taoism and Shinto. The hero Khan's unification of the 8 clans under a single banner represents the imposition of order upon chaos, the creation of unified structure from fragmented conflict. But importantly, even after unification, the need for the 8 gyms suggests that each of the original clans maintained its own identity and territories. The Kanto League system, therefore, represents a balance between unity and autonomy. The 8 regions maintain their distinct identities and leadership, but they are unified under a single championship structure and are bound by allegiance to the League. Raiden holds a particularly special place in Kanto's mythology, though not through intentional design, but rather through historical accident. Raiden was the first Pokémon ever fully designed by the Pokémon development team. As a result, Raiden appears at the top of internal development lists and is featured in various early designs and concept art. In-game, statues in early gyms and Pokémon centers sometimes feature Raiden models, placed there as placeholder artwork before developers had time to create variety-specific decorations. This has led some fans to theorize that Raiden holds special significance in Kanto's lore, though this is almost certainly unintentional. The concept of fossil Pokémon ties into Kanto's mythology by suggesting that the region has a geological and biological history extending far into the past. The existence of extinct Pokémon provides evidence of deep time, of vast ages during which Pokémon evolved and adapted, some species rising to dominance and others falling into extinction. This is remarkably sophisticated paleontological thinking for a children's game released in 1996. The presence of fossil Pokémon suggests that the world of Pokémon is subject to the same laws of natural history and evolution that govern the real world. The Pokédex itself, while primarily presented as a scientific instrument, also functions as a kind of encyclopedic mythology. Each entry in the Pokédex includes not only scientific information, but also cultural, legendary, and mythological information about each Pokémon. In this sense, the Pokédex is a modern translation of ancient mythology, taking the role that myths and legends traditionally played in pre-literate societies and modernizing it as scientific documentation. The player, by filling out the Pokédex, is engaged in a process of mythological preservation and documentation, ensuring that the knowledge of all Pokémon species is preserved for future generations. The connection between Kanto and real-world Tokyo and the Kanto region of Japan adds another layer of mythological meaning. By grounding the fantasy region in real-world geography, Game Freak created a sense of familiarity and accessibility. Players in Japan could recognize elements of their own cities and regions reflected in the Pokémon world. This grounding in reality made the mythology more resonant. Players weren't just engaging with abstract fantasy, but with a fantasy world connected to their own lived experience. The concept of the Indigo Plateau as the home of the Pokémon League and the ultimate destination of the player's journey draws parallels to mythology and legend across cultures. In many mythologies, the home of gods or the seat of ultimate power is located on a high mountain or plateau separated from the ordinary world. Mount Olympus in Greek mythology, Mount Meru in Buddhist and Hindu mythology, and Mount Kunlun in Chinese mythology all represent transcendent places of power and wisdom. The Indigo Plateau, while described as being reachable through ordinary means, maintains this mythological resonance. It is a place set apart, accessible only to those who have proven their worth by collecting badges and training Pokémon. As we draw this extensive exploration of Kanto to a close, we must reflect on what this region represents, not just within the Pokémon universe, but within the larger context of gaming history and cultural significance. Kanto is the birthplace of one of the most successful media franchises in human history. It is the region where everything began, where players first caught Pokémon, where the mechanics and mythology of the entire series were established. But more than that, Kanto is a masterclass in subtle world-building and layered narrative. On the surface, Kanto appears to be a cheerful, simple region where players catch Pokémon and battle trainers. But beneath that surface lies a region with deep history, complex mythology, dark implications, and mysteries that have continued to engage players for nearly 3 decades. The theories that fans have developed, the Great War, the Ditto-clone connection, the ancient clan system, all emerge organically from details present in the games. Details that suggest there is far more to Kanto than what is explicitly stated. The 17 mystery facts and lore elements we have explored throughout this journey represent only a fraction of the mysteries and meaningful details embedded within Kanto. Every NPC in the region has a story. Every location has significance. Every Pokémon carries weight and meaning. The games reward careful observation and attention, revealing layers of meaning to those willing to look closely. What makes Kanto particularly special is that it achieved this depth while maintaining accessibility. A casual player can enjoy Pokémon Red and Blue as a simple adventure, catching Pokémon, battling trainers, and becoming champion. The game works perfectly fine at this level. But a player willing to engage more deeply, to read Pokédex entries, to talk to NPCs, to explore every corner of the map, will discover a region far more complex and mythologically sophisticated than the surface suggests. The legacy of Kanto extends beyond the games themselves. The region has been revisited multiple times in remakes and re-releases. Pokémon Fire, Red and Leaf Green, Pokémon Let's Go Pikachu, and Eevee have both allowed players to return to Kanto and rediscover its mysteries in modernized form. Each revisit has added new details and nuances, allowing for deeper understanding and appreciation of the region. The creatures of Kanto, from the legendary Mew and Mewtwo to the starter Pokémon Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, to the ghost types that haunt Lavender Tower, have become iconic figures in gaming and pop culture. These creatures transcend the games and exist in anime, in movies, in trading cards, in merchandise, and in the hearts and minds of millions of fans worldwide. When someone thinks of Pokémon, they most often think of these Kanto creatures, the mysteries that remain unsolved. What happened to all the failed Mewtwo clones? Is Ditto really a failed clone of Mew? What exactly is Mew's purpose in the world? How much of the Great War theory is actually true? Keep players engaged and theorizing decades after the region was first created. The fact that official sources have never definitively answered these questions, instead maintaining a kind of deliberate ambiguity, shows remarkable restraint and wisdom on the part of the Pokémon creators. By leaving some questions unanswered, they allow the community to engage in creative interpretation and theory crafting, extending the lifespan and depth of the games far beyond what they might have been if every mystery was solved in official canon. Kanto's influence on the entire Pokémon franchise cannot be overstated. Everything that came after, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, Alola, Galar, and Paldea, all built upon the foundation laid by Kanto. The regions that followed have become increasingly complex and elaborate in their mythology and lore. Sinnoh introduced the Creation Trio and Arceus, effectively expanding the universe's cosmology. Unova introduced new mythologies and new paradigms for thinking about Pokémon. But none of these later regions would have been possible without Kanto establishing the baseline, without Kanto showing what was possible in terms of depth and complexity. Moreover, Kanto represents a particular kind of nostalgia for many players. For those who grew up with Pokémon in the 1990s and 2000s, Kanto is home. It is the region they explored as children, full of wonder and discovery. For newer players, Kanto represents the beginning of a journey that will take them through a vast and complex world. Whether you are returning to Kanto for the 100th time or exploring it for the first time, the region maintains its capacity to engage, to intrigue, and to inspire. As we conclude this deep dive into Kanto's 151 facts and lore elements, we must acknowledge that we have only scratched the surface. There are countless more details, connections, and theories that could be explored. The beauty of Kanto lies in its seemingly infinite depth. No matter how many times players explore the region, new details and connections continue to emerge. The region rewards attention, careful observation, and creative interpretation. If you have found this exploration of Kanto's lore and mysteries fascinating, I sincerely hope you will continue to engage with these worlds and stories. The Pokémon universe is vast, rich, and endlessly rewarding to those willing to look beyond the surface. Whether you are a casual player, simply enjoying the games, or a hardcore fan engaged in deep lore analysis, there is always more to discover. Please like this video if you have found it informative and engaging. Subscribe to the Poke Dreams channel for more deep dives into Pokémon lore, facts, and mysteries. And be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Our next journey will take us to another region where new mysteries await, new legends call out to be explored, and new connections wait to be discovered. Thank you for spending this time with us, for allowing us to take you on this journey through Kanto's mysteries. Sleep well, knowing that in the world of Pokémon, there is always more wonder to be found, more stories to be told, and more magic to be experienced. Until next time, this is Poke Dreams, and we'll see you in the next video.